What if the update you trusted was the poison? What if the password you forgot still opened a door to shut off fuel to half a coastline? What if a hotel check-in decades ago still whispers your name into the dark? Tonight, we open 3 cyber case files that once turned quiet assumptions into loud consequences. No superpowers, no exotic 0 days require just old keys, chain reactions, and the easy paths people leave in place. I'll show you how each attack unfolded in plain language and the quiet habits that could have stopped them before panic made the news. Stay with me because the lesson that saves you rarely sounds like an alarm. We begin with silence. The kind that spreads across the eastern United States when gas pumps cough, then die. In May 2021, Colonial Pipeline, the operator that supplies roughly 45% of the East Coast's fuel, shut down much of its operation because it couldn't trust its own network. The cause wasn't an explosion or a hurricane, it was a password. The attackers were part of an affiliate program called DarkSide, a criminal franchise that rented out ransomware, the kind of malware that scrambles your files into unreadable noise and demands payment for a key to unlock them. The initial foothold was painfully ordinary, a remote login account used for a virtual private network, a door meant for employees working from home. Reports later pointed to a single account that wasn't protected by multi-factor authentication, the simple second step like a code texted to your phone or a prompt in an app that turns a stolen password into a dead end. That one account, left behind and not shut off, let someone who knew the right letters and numbers look like they belong. Picture the timeline. A criminal logs in through that side door. No alarms because the password checks out. On the inside, they move like a janitor slipping through the offices at night. They look around, quietly mapping which machines talk to which folders hold billing records, which servers run critical business logic. In security terms, we call this lateral movement, escalation, discovery. In human terms, it is curiosity with a flashlight in an empty building. Before they turn on the sirens, they do one more thing. They copy what they can carry. That's exfiltration, the discrete act of taking data out. In Colonial's case, investigators said the criminals pulled roughly 100 gigabytes of internal information in a couple of hours. Think invoices, emails, contracts, embarrassing, perhaps damaging, but mostly leverage. Because when the lock finally slammed on, the threat wasn't just your files are scrambled. It was also we have your secrets. Only then did they release the payload. Ransomware doesn't break the machines themselves. It changes the logs, files become unreadable gibberish, and the hustle begins. Pay the ransom for a key or rebuild from backups if you have them and can trust them. Colonial Pipeline made a call many businesses make under pressure. They paid roughly $4.4 million for a decryption tool, but paying is no rewind button. Decryption tools can be slow and unreliable, rebuilding takes days. And in the middle of uncertainty, Colonial did something most people outside cybersecurity had never seen. It shut down pipeline operations as a precaution to contain the unknown. Fuel deliveries halted, lines formed, the story broke. A high-tech break-in became a very low-tech problem. People needed gas and couldn't get it. That's the impact to remember. A single unprotected login bridged the digital and the physical world. Inside companies, we draw boundaries between IT systems, the billing, emails, office tools, and OT systems, operational technology, the controls that make valves turn and pumps push. If one has to distrust the other, the safe choice may be to turn everything off. Days later, operations resumed. The FBI clawed back a portion of the ransom by tracking a cryptocurrency wallet. The headlines moved on, but the lesson stayed ugly and simple. Old doors matter, and a second lock is often the difference between a fumble and a failure. There's a second lesson in this first file. Ransomware isn't just an encryption party. It's a business. Affiliates rent the tools. Negotiators haggle. Data theft becomes a pressure tactic. If a company can rebuild its files, the criminals still have another leverage trove of taken documents and the threat of public posting. That's why the quiet hours before the lock are so dangerous. It's also why prevention beats response. Multi-factor authentication on anything that faces the internet. Network segmentation so the office side can't easily wander into the industrial side. Backups that are offline disconnected from the network so they can't be scrambled along with everything else. And practice, because in a crisis, muscle memory matters. Now, change the scene. You're not in a pipeline control room. You're at your desk, the laptop hums, an icon blinks. An update is available from a brand you trust. You click, the bar fills. Somewhere, a new piece slides into the machine's inner clockwork. Nothing looks different, and that was the plan. Case File 2 is ASUS ShadowHammer, unveiled in 2019 but active in 2018, and it's a masterclass in the cruel art of poisoning the well. To understand it, think of software like food. We're told to shop at reputable stores, check packaging, buy brands with a good reputation. But what if someone slips into the factory and swaps one ingredient before it's sealed and shipped? You can't taste the difference. The label still says safe. You bring it home. ASUS makes laptops. To keep them running, they also make a utility called Live Update. Like the name says, it updates your system drivers, firmware, the little pieces that make everything talk properly. The attackers didn't trick users into installing some random file. They reportedly breached part of the ASUS build or distribution process and managed to slip malicious code into official updates. Worse, the poisoned updates were signed with ASUS's legitimate digital certificate, the cryptographic seal that tells your machine this file really came from who it claims to. Code signing is like a wax seal on a letter. The envelope looks right, the seal looks right, the address matches. The content is wrong. Here's where it gets stranger. The malicious update didn't attack everyone equally. Inside was a dormant door that checked your machine's MAC address, a unique identifier tied to your network card, like a fingerprint for that piece of hardware. The code compared it against a list of roughly 600 targets. If your MAC address matched, the door opened for the next stage. If not, the code stayed mostly quiet. It meant millions could receive something tainted without obvious damage, while a small, specific group got targeted. That's a supply chain attack in plain terms. Compromise the supplier, and you compromise every customer downstream, even the careful ones. Security researchers later estimated over 1 million machines may have received the malicious update, though the number of active targets was far smaller. Kaspersky alone observed tens of thousands. The campaign ran for months. Imagine whole office floors bathed in blue light at night, computers updating in their sleep, everything looking fine, while an invisible net cast for a tiny school of fish within the ocean of users. Why did it work? Trust. We're taught to update, and that's good advice. But we're not taught to question the factory stamp. Individuals can't realistically verify the build chain of their vendors. Companies can monitor unusual behavior and update process, reaching out to an unexpected server, a signed file with a strange certificate chain, machines making connections they never made before but that requires watching the edges all the time. For most of us, it's about balance. Keep updates on, get them from the official source. And accept that not all trust is blind. Vendors must protect their keys and build systems like crown jewels, because that's exactly what they are. Supply chain attacks are elegant because they attack what you believe is safe. A USB cable that wasn't, a dependency in a software library that gets replaced, a hardware driver updated at 2 a.m. with a gift inside. It's not fear-mongering to say the kill chain isn't always a fake email or a goofy attachment. Sometimes the you asked for this is what does the damage? If you want more case files dissected like this, subscribe and stay with us. The third case file moves slow. It starts with a hotel keycard chirping at a door, a lobby that looks the same in any city, and a booking system that holds more about your life than you realize. Marriott's acquisition of Starwood brought with it a guest reservation database that, by the time investigators unraveled the thread in 2018, had been quietly refilled through since as early as 2014. For years is a lifetime in the digital world. In dwell time, the measure of how long intruders linger undetected, it's an eternity. Unlike ransomware, which shouts, "This one whispered." The initial foothold was most likely stolen credentials and a vulnerable web application, nothing dramatic, just the usual open door. Once inside, the attackers did what all patient thieves do. They found the records worth keeping: names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, dates of birth, itineraries where people went, when, how often. Even passport numbers, the kind of detail that makes international life possible. Payment card data was present too, encrypted with protections around it. But encryption only protects as far as the keys are guarded, and everything else, the unchangeable story of who you are, has gravity all its own. Marriott said that up to about 383 million guests were affected in some way across years of data. Importantly, not every record had every field, but the scale was staggering. Among the specifics, millions of passport numbers were included, many encrypted, and millions of unencrypted passport numbers were also exposed. The company later explained the card data was encrypted and that it believed the components to decrypt it were not compromised. Still, think about the practical cost. A credit card can be replaced. A passport can be reissued, yes, but your old number still lives in logs, in forms, in systems you don't control. And your travel history, who you met in which city? That's not a password you can change. It's your life's metadata, and it's very hard to stuff back into a safe once it's blown into the wind. Consider the timeline through human eyes. In 2014, access begins, likely with a web app login reused or phished, maybe a server with a weakness. Over the years, the intruders maintain persistence, that is, they ensure they can keep getting in, even if one path closes. They install remote tools that look like normal administration software, because that's precisely what good admin tools do: give someone power from far away. They run searches at 2 a.m., they compress and encrypt databases before sending them out. To blend with normal traffic, every step is small. Every step is forgettable, the sum is not. Discovery came when a security tool noticed something unusual in 2018, a classic tripwire moment, a puff of smoke in a closed room. Investigators followed the thread, found an unauthorized tool running, and pulled on it until the whole pattern emerged. The notification process ran into its own complexities. When many years and many systems are involved, it's like piecing together a drifted puzzle, especially after a corporate acquisition. Regulators took notice, lawsuits came, the company promised improvements. But for travelers, CEOs, and backpackers alike, the personal calculus changed. Phishing emails that looked like hotel confirmations suddenly made more sense to the wrong people. Targeted scams could mention dates and cities, facts that make fraud feel like truth. The damage of a data breach is both immediate and slow. It's the initial fear, the password resets, the credit monitoring. Then it's the long tail, sharp or spear phishing that uses your real itinerary, phone calls that reference your actual stay, a thief who knows that your passport number ends with these 4 digits. For people in sensitive roles, that kind of detail is leverage. For everyone else, it's a persistent annoyance that occasionally lands as real harm. Each of these case files began with a small permission. In the pipeline case, a password and the absence of a second check. In the update case, a vendor's signature trusted implicitly. In the hotel case, a login and a database that became a diary for someone else. Each became big because time and trust were on the attacker's side. That's the pattern you keep, not the specific brand or the year. The pattern is humility. Assume a door you forgot still exists. Assume an update could be a Trojan horse even if it wears your vendor seal. Assume your data, once collected, is a liability as much as an asset. So what do you do if you don't run a pipeline or a laptop factory or a global hotel chain? You do the small things that tilt the odds. Turn on multi-factor authentication for your email, your cloud storage, your bank, your social accounts anywhere it's offered. It's a second lock that kills most password thefts dead, because a password alone becomes a souvenir instead of a skeleton key. Keep reliable offline backups of what you can't lose: photos, tax records, the files that matter, and test that you can restore them. If ransomware or a bad update scrambles your world, your response becomes a restore instead of a ransom. And when money moves, do not trust the screen alone. If an invoice changes, if a new account arrives by email, call a known number and verify with a living person before you send a cent. That one habit neuters a whole category of fraud and the quiet opportunists who live off it. On the organizational side, the lesson scale: turn off old accounts. Segment your networks so a compromise in the office doesn't wander into the factory. Watch your update infrastructure like an adversary would protect build servers and code signing keys with the same seriousness you protect your financial systems. Log enough to see the smoke, and keep the logs long enough to notice when the smoke isn't really new. But here's the part people forget: you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a harder target than yesterday. The Colonial Pipeline attackers didn't invent a new science. They found a door most of us understand. ShadowHammer didn't trick users with sloppy phishing. It wrote a trusted process that vendors, not buyers, must harden. The Marriott intruders didn't knock servers over. They waited. Patience is a threat. You answer with preparation. When we open case files like these, it's not to gawk at the wreckage. It's to recognize the recurring shapes. The breaches you remember have different names, but the patterns repeat: old keys, poisoned wells, long shadows. The good news is that the defense patterns repeat too. Add a second check to where you log in, keep a clean copy of what you can't lose, and verify with a human before you move money. If that sounds unimpressive, good. Quiet fixes prevent loud failures. In security, the most boring day is the best day. And the most dramatic lesson is this: the first step to staying safe is deciding you are worth protecting. Because someone else already decided you are worth targeting, and they don't need much to prove it. This has been Cybercase Files. Remember the shapes, keep your guard without losing your mind, and sleep easy knowing that caution is not paranoia, it's maintenance.